What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Pod Scum. I am your host, your bastard of ceremonies, Reckless Rexx Ruger. That, if you couldn't tell by those enormous two front teeth, is my sidekick, the Freddie Mercury puppet. We're back with another amazing episode. Thank you for tuning in. This is, of course, the place where only the cool kids come to chop it up with your boy, Reckless Rexx Ruger, a.k.a. Diamond David Lee Roth Jr. My guest is here, so I'm going to cut the nonsense and get right down to it, man. No spewing, no espousing. I'll do that at the end. Let's get down to it and chop it up. I'm excited, man. Really love this guy. Been looking forward to this, man. So let's get down to it. And, of course, Mr. International, we're going to Austria for this one. I take it all the way there, baby. All the way there. Where won't I go? Where won't I go? Where won't I go, Ray? That's what I was just telling the people, man, right before I started, man. I'm like Mr. International, man. You're way overseas. Correct?
Yeah. Yes, I'm actually speaking to you remotely from one of the many moons of Saturn, known as Austria.
Or AKA Austria.
Austria, yeah.
The home of the great, legendary Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yes, and a few others who we will, well, especially one we will not mention today.
I like that you're bathed in purple light too, man. I'm wearing a print shirt today, so it's really setting an ambiance. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Not raining here, but
but I want to ask you first and foremost. Now, you're about to embark on somewhat of a new project, Slow Burn Drifters, correct?
Yeah.
And I'm curious. It seems like nowadays when I talk to people on here, technology has become so prevalent. Obviously, it's creating the opportunity for us to do this or whatever, man. It's changed the musical industry quite a bit, man. Do you embrace it? Because it does seem like now, unfortunately, many people in the music industry are viewed more on their views, their social media profile, or sometimes, unfortunately, rather more than their talent.
Well, I think it's certainly much bigger than whatever my anecdotal experience might be as a musician, but I do embrace it. I think it's inevitable. I think to not embrace it would be impossible, and I think it's really the outgrowth of something that's been going on a long time.
Yeah.
And I think it's more a matter of how do you integrate it into your life? Are you using it or is it using you?
Right.
And being somebody who's lived when those things, the current version of it was far from existing in everyday life, I at least know what it meant to not have that at my fingertips. And
right.
I could certainly go into a long list of things that I think are negative about it, but I think we all know what they are.
Yeah.
In terms of creativity.
Yep.
It's certainly a tool that allows you to do a lot of very interesting things very quickly, but I think the question is, would you be able to do those things without this tool?
Right.
Would you be able to do anything without it? And if the answer is no, well, then if it's a crutch for your own imagination, that's a little bit of a problem. But
is it an issue though? But does it happen to be an issue where, like, as an artist, like when you're trying to put musical, material out, and the rock magazines and a lot of the tools, videos are still being made, but there's not really an MTV or a VH1 or it seems like now advertising on social media kind of is a big thing. But is it something that you feel comfortable doing? Does it put more pressure on an artist to say, God, I've got to have a fucking Instagram, I've got to have a Facebook, I've got to fucking be here, I've got to be there, raise my visibility?
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, if you're really somebody that's, I think for certain people, they just love that. It's just like a window into every moment of their life. I'm somebody who is a complete opposite. So for me, it's a little bit of it can be straining, but I think the ability to be able to reach people that you otherwise wouldn't reach is also the other side of the coin. So
yeah.
You don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Right.
But
right.
It's really it's a different world, and I think it's something that's still evolving into what I don't quite know. And this is a necessary part of that process, but there's things about it that, it's certainly straining. And it's I think that it's just fleeting, it's too easy in certain ways to
Yeah.
just, fill space with a picture of my last meal.
Right.
Why
Right.
should
Yeah.
work compete with that? But hey, maybe that people don't feel that way about your work, so
Right.
they'd rather
Right.
leave it a burn.
Yeah. So if I were to go back to the beginning, was there a specific, and this is usually where I kick these interviews off, was there a specific album or an artist, or maybe even more specifically, even a song that really got its hooks in you early on and lit the fire for you to want to do music?
Yeah, I think when I was very young, I just remember hearing a lot of AM and FM radio. And I mean, I heard a lot of music actually, but I remember hearing uh, probably in between the hits of the day in the late 70s or something that People Are Strange would come on the radio, and I think, okay, this is different. The way it sounded, the way it felt, and what was being expressed. I didn't know who the Doors were or anything like that. I was probably 8, but I remember that really wanting to find out what that was and where it came from, and I got the vinyl LP. I think of it was probably the Doors' greatest hits, and then I found out those songs were on other albums. And I had no context for it. I didn't know who they were or what they were about, but I just liked the way it felt in this whole dark carnival thing. I mean, I think a lot of people contextualize the Doors and associate it with that awful film from the 90s, but that hadn't happened yet, and that really made me I just wanted to do this.
Yeah. So the Doors literally opened the doors.
Yeah,
figuratively and literally.
Good thing they weren't called the toilets.
I know. Good point. and so when you're creating music now, and you were kind enough to email me some of the tracks from this upcoming album. The single that's out right now is Golden.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I think fans are really going to love this. It is really an amazing piece of work. But when you sit down and plan it out, man, because like I said, so much has changed in the music industry. Attention spans, not what they used to be. It almost feels like now it's become a singles/EP driven world. Does that come into play when you're thinking how long or short a piece of work should be?
No, it's usually just, if, I mean, you have to draw the line somewhere. If something had a 10-minute intro, and the rest of it was accessible for a single, well, maybe there should be a version without the intro. I don't know, but no, but I do like songs that have an identifiable verse and chorus, among other forms of songwriting. So yeah, I do end up having songs, I think, where there is a verse and a chorus in it, but no, I don't sit down to try to write anything like that. It's just what comes out, and afterwards you sort of put a frame around it and go, well, I guess it could be this one.
Right.
So
it's not. So you wouldn't say there's a set formula, you know what I mean? Like, I want the album to come in at this many minutes or have this many tracks. You know what I mean? Like as an artist, how do you know when it's done?
I usually know when it's done because there's a point where I'll do something and I'll really like to see what I can do with it. It's more of like this attitude where you're engaging with the art, where you're sort of whatever you're making, you treat it like a living thing. I think the word is anthropomorphize. I probably just butchered that, but maybe someone out there can correct me. And it sort of takes on a life of its own. You're saying, well, what would I like to do? But what's its nature? Like, what would it do? What would it like to do? And then you start following that, and you're making small changes, maybe sometimes something more radical. But then you get to a point where you realize that, or at least I do, that I'm not making it better. I'm just making it different.
Right.
And when I get to that point, that's when I know, it's time to wrap it up, and it's done. It's telling me it's done, or at least that's the way I experience it.
Yeah. And so when you sit down to craft songs, well, it's kind of a two-part question. I'll do the first part first. What is the formula or the ingredients that work best for you, the recipe for a great song? What typically comes to you first? A title, a riff, a line?
Well, it's actually, it happens both ways, but on this record in particular, it was always lines. And
Yeah.
then I would, it's kind of like someone, when they build those ships in bottles,
Yeah.
it's just like you've got the
Yeah.
container first, and I guess the container would be a line,
Yeah.
and you're trying to build that out. And I would find a line or a phrase that just stuck with me, and then just kind of reverse engineer it, where I'm like building something that leads up to that, and or maybe something that comes from it, and then just seeing where it goes and like what kind of chords does it really take well to. And in the past, it's always been like, it'll be a riff or a chord progression or something like that. But this time, for this record, I did it differently, but I do both.
And what kind of a creative are you? Because I talk to so many musical artists on here. A common theme that I'm hearing now, and again in the technology era, is people getting sparks of creativity throughout the day, and they're either putting something into their phone, humming something into their phone, singing something into their phone, and then there's more disciplined type creatives who I guess can almost treat it, like a job. Go into a room, say, I'm going to go in today and I'm going to write. I'm going to create music. For you, what's the process like?
Well, in my case, maybe it's a little unique because I'm also recording and producing music.
Yeah.
That's the type of control freak egomaniac that I am.
Yeah.
More out of necessity and knowing what I want. But I think the danger of that is that if you're sitting and you're listening to something maybe 4,000 more times than any human being ever should,
yeah,
you have to remember why you liked it in the first place, because it's quickly becomes like the world's oldest piece of chewing gum. So you have to kind of leave a trail of breadcrumbs and go, well, this is why, this is how it struck me. And after, fixing the frequency of something for hours, you don't feel that way about it anymore.
Right.
So to answer your question, I have those moments of sparks where I'm recording ideas into a phone or jotting something down and feel inspired. And then there's other times where, just through the rigorous process of just working on it daily in this kind of routine, there's these traffic jams that come up, and then there'll be a breakthrough that only comes through the work. So I find that it's both, but I think maybe because I'm taking on different roles throughout that process, that maybe that's why I'm saying that.
Yeah. Now, I talked to an artist last night, and I'm curious if you've ever experienced this when you get to a point where you ever feel stalled creatively, i.e. Writer's block, I guess people would more commonly refer to it as, or just like when you're stuck or stalled for ideas.
I do, but what usually happens is then, I just continue working on something and I'll hit a wall.
Yeah.
And so then I'll take it in another direction. I'll hit another wall, and then another, and on and on and on. And through doing that, there'll be a breakthrough. And it's, this is completely subjective, but I'll just tell you the way it feels to me is that every time that happens, it's because what I thought, was maybe a turnaround or maybe a verse.
Yeah.
Or maybe, a change here. That's not actually what it was. I was looking at it in a way that prevented me from taking it to where I thought it wanted to go. And once I kind of see that from another perspective, it usually breaks up the logjam, and then a whole bunch of other ideas come out of it. So I wouldn't really define it as writer's block as much as a misconception of what it is I'm dealing with.
Right.
I've got it upside down, maybe, but that's the way it happens with for me, at least. I have having ideas. I have too many ideas, so I have to kind of narrow them down. That's
a nice problem to have if you're an artist, though. You know what I mean? Like
it is. It's something that goes
prolific. Yeah, it's nice to feel creatively prolific, or I mean, that's got to be a good feeling.
It is, but if you don't build your life around having an outlet, you're gonna end up in a rubber room somewhere.
Well,
You might
I
end
think
up
one of
there.
the trends. I think one of the trends that happened around COVID, and again, people couldn't get out and tour really, obviously because of the restrictions that were put on us. We were seeing a lot of work being, being released. I think that's where the singles and the EPs and just keeping an influx of work constantly, just pouring out there. It almost seemed like people were afraid to be forgotten about. But then the flip side of that, you can oversaturate, and maybe the world has too much of you. You know what I mean? There used to be a formula back in the 80s and 90s where an album would come out, by your favorite artist, and they would tour, and that album, I've said this before on here, would kind of marinate and have a life for a couple of years. You wouldn't even expect another album from your favorite band unless it was 2 or 3 years had passed. Is that time frame still the same? How fast should artists be putting stuff out?
I think it's just completely in flux. Now it's, everything is just released as singles, which, my compromise would be, Golden is the 4th single from this record, but that's just the way things are released these days. I mean, no one's holding a gun to your head, but
Right.
Slow Burn Drifters is a new project. It's nice if people are able to find out about it before the record comes out.
Yeah.
And I think that, it seems to be a little bit backwards, whereas you had said earlier about technology. I mean, there's this sort of prevailing wisdom that there has to be some like countable number of 10 to 15 hooks before the first chorus hits,
Right.
and then the first chorus hit at 5.8 seconds, and it's like, obviously
it's almost like there's templates now. You know what I mean? Like norms. You know what I mean? When that's not very rock and roll, though.
Well,
at least it doesn't feel it.
I think it's bad. For me, it's no, can't. Maybe there's someone that does that in a way that is really palatable and does well, but it's not going to be me. So it's like, I think if you understand how dynamics work, whether it be film or music, that would be the equivalent of saying that the best poets use the longest words.
Right.
Listening to the auctioneer is really that's pretty good vehicle for processing deep information.
Yeah.
It doesn't work for certain things.
Now, you were fortunate, to have the privilege and the honor. I assume that would be the way that you would look at it as well, with having some amazingly talented people that you've gotten the chance to work with, man. Talk a little bit about some of those people that have come in and out of your life, i.e. Jack Irons, ALAIN, JOHANNES, who I was just honored to have on here as well. So some of those people, how did they become involved with this project with you, and what's your ties to?
I met Jack through ALAIN, and my former manager, I think it was 2015, he got me in touch with ALAIN. He knew his manager, and I ended up recording a record under a different name at ALAIN's studio 11 AD in Hollywood in Los Angeles, and I flew over there and met ALAIN, which was fantastic because I'd been a fan of his work and so much of the work he's been behind and connected with. And, so it was really fantastic for me. And, of course, aside from being such a gifted multi-instrumentalist, he's a great guy, just to spend time with and be around. And it's so full of energy and stories. And just like his music is really an extension of who he is as a person.
Well said. Yeah, I agree.
And through being there, he thought Jack would be the right person to play drums on the album. And Jack came down to ALAIN's studio, and that's where I met Jack. And he played on first few songs and just like clicked immediately. And he just had this groove pocket that was just so immediate.
For people that might go Google him, we'll stop you right now. Jack Irons, of course, original Chili Peppers, Pearl Jam, an amazing resume. 11. So just for people that know the significance of having a Jack Irons on a piece of work, he's got the chops.
Yeah, and I think ALAIN and Jack could both be said of them. I mean, they were both in 11. It's just that everything they're involved in, they just make it better. And it's no accident that the bands they were in did as well as they did. I mean, you could have a conversation about being in the right place, the right time, but that's no accident. And
Right.
so yeah, and I was able to speak with Jack during the recording, and really clicked with him as a person too. And we just remained in touch after that. And so during this album, I was able to get in touch with Jack, through email, and then we spoke on the phone, and he ended up playing drums on like one song, like see how it goes, and it just really went well, and he ended up playing drums on every track. And Alan was on tour in Europe, and towards the end of his tour, I got in touch with him, and he came down to my studio in Austria, and we just went through each of the songs, and they'd already been recorded at that point, and he just added like some finishing touches and put his spin on something, which was what I wanted him to do.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that sort of dovetails with having such a deep respect for him as an artist and a person, and the fact of what I mentioned earlier about this oldest piece of chewing gum, having a fresh perspective from someone you trust who also does everything from top to bottom was really helpful.
Yeah. There's no way a guy like Alan doesn't lend something to your project. I mean, the guy is just all over the place, man, with the engineering, the mixing, the producing, even behind the scenes stuff. We think about what a great performer he actually is, man. But then the stuff he's able to do, off, out of sight, I mean, his hand and stuff that you might not necessarily, actually see, but you hear it in the finished product.
You do. And I think he's, somebody who's discovered it, maybe not, doesn't see it in this way, but what it looks like to me, there's a certain point where you hone a skill, and then there's a certain point where all these lines intersect, and he's able to kind of take that part of himself and apply it to all of these different facets of music. And you feel the same thing coming through, and that's his own individuality and his fingerprint as an artist and a human being, like it shows. And same with Jack.
Yeah. Now, another guy I got to ask you about, just because, we've talked prior to this on the phone and stuff. Of course, you are your own artist, but I couldn't help but be drawn to the fact and harken back to one of my favorite guys, the great Mark Lanegan, whose voice, when I listen to you, certainly does remind me of. But you have worked with Mark Lanegan, though.
Yeah, I have. I mean, I grew up being
the late great, I should say. Late great. Rest in peace.
So sorry to say.
Yeah, very sorry to say. I know he's one of the only people that my wife would probably allow me to hang the poster up next to my bed that I have downstairs of Mark Lanegan. Mark Lanegan is bedside.
Yeah, I think,
which is comforting to me. Not so sure my wife is psyched that Mark Lanegan posters in our room, but hey, that's the compromise you make. You're a married guy. You understand these things.
I do. And I met Mark in Vienna, in Austria.
Mm-hmm.
And I opened for him, and we spoke in the backstage area. It was just he and I before anybody got there, and we had a mutual friend, and I told him, of course, I was. He introduced himself to me as if I didn't know who he was.
Right.
We had a really nice conversation, and maybe because of that conversation, he checked out my set and said some really great, nice things to me. Afterwards, that just really floored me, and being such a huge fan, and we stayed in touch after that. And he ended up singing on a song of mine, again under a different name. Who's I'll mention the name soon, but just what's today? Is it? It's the beginning of the year. I believe it's the 2nd. It's also a Thursday, and I'm not going to feel too much on a Thursday. So
I did realize though. That the name does pop up at the bottom of the screen.
It does, yeah. So, not exactly, but
yeah. But when you put, so you had some great people play on this album. We just mentioned Jack, Alan, Johannes, man. But talk to me a little bit about going forward, though. These are guys that played on the album, but what type of a band have you assembled here for Slow Burn Drifters? Obviously, your wife plays on the songs.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my wife and I, Violet, and a bassist and a drummer here in Europe, and that's our live band. It's 4-piece.
Okay. And like, why specifically a four-piece? Me not being a musician myself, does it just does it just serve the band the best? Because I always wonder, man. You see bands with 5 members. You see a lot of great 3-pieces. You think of like a Nirvana or something. You know what I mean? That can still make their sound really big. You know what I mean? I'm curious, why a quartet?
The album is actually kind of layered, and that's just the way it was made.
Okay.
It wasn't made with, this is going to be on such a way as a recording. It's just the way it evolved, and as it's happening, you're sort of thinking, okay, I guess it's this.
Yeah.
But live, we're not making an effort to recreate the album versions of the songs, and there's a lot of ways those songs can be interpreted, and there's a lot more opportunity for spaciousness as a 4-piece. Then some songs have strings on them, and I'm not really interested in bringing a string
right
on stage. My guitar playing is it covers a wide space, and there's a lot of emptiness in it too, and that's really important. So we're just sort of interpreting those songs and seeing where they go. And when I had written those songs, sort of in reference to the question you asked me earlier, when I know something is done, one of the other factors that lets me know it's done is when I'm able to sort of just strum it, very quietly on an acoustic guitar and whisper the lyrics and just go through the chord changes, and it still stands up as a song. That it's there. It's not relying on some kind of gimmick or something like that. So I think that allows the songs to be clothed differently and performed differently, where they're really receptive to it. And when something is coming at you through a PA, whether or not you have every layer, I think is really irrelevant. I think it's more organic and real when there's some space in between.
Well, I want to say, as a married guy, I'm curious, what's the dynamic like? Obviously we saw the aforementioned ALAIN Johannes worked with his wife, Natasha, made amazing music for years and years and years and years. What's the dynamic like when your personal relationship and collaborating and making music? What's that dynamic like when you do it with your spouse? I imagine there's probably like even more of a symmetry and an amazing connection. And what is her role in the creative process?
Yeah, well, it's just very telepathic. I mean, I just share everything with her that I write. As I'm writing it, she's my audience, and she comes up with things as well, and it just sort of goes from there. But it's always been that way for a long time. Whether it's been on the stage or off the stage, and so we're just sort of doing the more on-stage version of that now.
And does your wife have input into the writing of the songs?
Yeah. I mean, she always is making suggestions and saving me from my worst self. Often.
Yeah, that does help. I know. Thank God. Happy wife, happy life. At least that's the way the saying goes. Those are words to adhere to, though, man. I mean, I can honestly say, man, that I give my wife a lot of credit too, man, for just being like more of a rock in a lot of places where that I could be. You know what I mean? Like you find your roles, I think, in relationships, and you find out what strengths to play to, and where that person can fit in where you're weak.
Yeah.
That's kind of a nice dynamic.
Yeah, I agree. You should be with someone that helps you aspire to be the best version of yourself you can be.
Yeah,
and I think that's what we. I think we do that for each other.
Yeah,
I'm happy to be able to say that after a long time.
And so when you're putting these singles out, and you said Golden is out right now, and that's the third or fourth? Fourth?
It's the fourth, yeah.
And how do you decide out of a whole palette of songs which ones go out and in which order? Do you have an input in that? Is that management, somebody else?
Oh yeah, the management and the label are me. So
okay.
Myself and I said no. It's just there's just a very small circle of people that have heard it. That includes Jack and Alan as well, and a few other people. My good friend Ian, and Violet and I, and it just sort of seems self-evident that this would make a good single. You don't always get it right,
Right.
And I don't think there's any kind of formula for that. It's just like a gut feeling,
Yeah. And if you could describe, because this is a new project for you, kind of still in the embryonic stages, whatever, and you're kind of just just getting started with it. I hate genres, man. I talk about it on here all the time, man. How many genres and subgenres there are, man. And I've already read some things, where they're coining phrases for the type of music that you do. But I'm gonna let you say it. For people that would be new to what Slow Burn Drifters is, what would you say that they should expect from the music?
Yeah, well, I have to preface that with it's like asking me what I'm like as a person.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
when
Well, I've already heard. Well, you can rest assured that I've already heard alt blues, dream pop, and I'm not even sure what the fuck that even is, and gothic Americana.
Yeah,
And I think these are on your website too. But I want to know how you think those are accurate.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. Alternative indie, gothic Americana, dream pop. What was the other one? Or was that it?
Those are the three that I have. Yeah.
Something like my own version of that, which is a terrible thing to say in a sense. If somebody says, we're going to go to a restaurant, and they say, well, what kind of restaurant? And I say, well, it's like nothing you've ever eaten in your life. Well, I think I'll stay here.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think it has elements of bands in those genres, but I don't know, what is alternative? What does that even mean?
I know.
What? It's
That's
just
one of the hardest ones. Alternative is a tough one.
It's yeah, but it has elements of those things if you associate that with different bands. And I think there's a singer-songwriter aspect to it. I like a lot of singer-songwriters from the late 60s, early 70s, although I don't feel we've made a record that's like, hailed to the 60s or 70s. Yeah. I wouldn't want to do that. It's still contemporary to me. It's about this moment. Did I answer your question at all, or did I just?
Yeah. No, well, because I hate that too, and because of the nature of this podcast, I do have a lot of people from the rock and even the extreme metal world on here, and I noticed in metal it's very prevalent. It used to just be there was heavy metal, then there was metal, then there was thrash, then there was death metal, and suddenly there's hardcore and deathcore and metalcore, and there's all these different genres and subgenres, so it can get very confusing. And you're right, alternative is even like an indie. I mean, what does that mean? That basically just means you're not signed to a label, or
it's not deathcore,
right?
It's not Indonesian polka.
Okay, so you're here to rule those out.
I can rule them out. Yeah.
That's good. And so the project will come out here in 2025. At what point are you projecting a release date?
Album will come out March 7th.
March 7th. Okay. Soon. Okay. Yeah. Very soon. And so now that album is done in the can and ready to come out, do you give yourself any downtime, or are the creative juices always flowing and you already start to amass material for what comes next?
I'm always writing in one way or another, even just like like you said before, like jotting down notes or ideas and things like that. That never stops. But right now the focus is really on getting the record together to play live, and the plan is just tour for the next few years.
Okay, and I'm glad you brought up touring, because again, having musicians on here, touring is really where a lot of bands' bread is buttered. To coin to use the term. So getting out there, selling merchandise, being out on the road. So what is a good working tour itinerary for you? I know a lot of people go out for they like to go out for, they don't want to be home for away from home for too long, weeks, months. I mean, like, what's a manageable tour at this stage in your career that you like to do?
Well, I guess you probably have to ask me afterwards, but yeah, I think like maybe a month here, take a break, another month, 2 weeks on, 4 weeks on, 6 weeks on.
That seems to be the working number I hear a lot.
I'm not really that picky.
Yeah. But it is a big part of the industry now, though, obviously. I mean, you have to be out there slogging it out on the road.
Well, yeah, I mean, that I think, but that's what makes a band a band.
Absolutely.
I think there's, you get a sense of your own songs as you're playing them from a stage that really inform your writing. in future songs. I think,
Yeah.
ideas come, there's this energetic exchange there, and I think their ideas come to you in a way that they otherwise wouldn't. And I think it's a necessary facet of writing, just being an artist in general. It doesn't mean you have to do it all the time, but
Right.
it has to happen. And it's great to be able to connect with people live, where everything that we get these days is, again, as you mentioned before, is a nice counterbalance to what is digital and artificial and fleeting.
Yeah, I agree.
But
Yeah.
tweeting and talking while you're
Right.
playing, they would never do that to me.
Right. And so what does an evening with Slow Burn Drifters look like? Like, have you thought about like, because obviously like this is music that probably plays well to a certain ambiance. I mean, do you think of that stuff? You start to think of like what the production of seeing you guys live and in that setting looks like?
I'm not like some person that sits in a purple room or anything.
Right.
But yeah, I mean,
this is the stage set right here.
There needs to be just a mood, but it should be natural as well.
Yeah.
Nothing try or pretentious, like me wearing a fedora and dark glasses in a violet basement.
Yeah, that works. No, that works. Don't change that.
Yeah, I mean, it's got to. It should look the way it sounds, feel the way it sounds. It's
absolutely.
Yeah.
So you feel this is more like this is almost more like, remember how they used to kind of like set the stage like for like when like back when like MTV like did Unplugged, they would always make the setting look very intimate. I remember watching Alice in Chains do it, and I don't know how much input the bands had, but it was always very dimly lit, candles. I mean, like it was very atmospheric. I mean, and I realized that they're playing a stripped down version of their songs. That kind of environment serves the songs even better.
Yeah, I mean, I like that theatricality, and the songs there's a lot of the influence of cinema is also what Slow Burn Drifters are about. Films themselves and like actual soundtracks, like it's as if these are it's songwriting, but it should feel like a film.
Right.
That's wanted to happen in the songs.
Yeah, because that does seem like a bygone thing. And again, this is a conversation I was having with a recent guest too, man. We're like, when you go see live acts now, yes, you'll get songs, and yes, you'll obviously get the band up there. You'll physically see them or whatever. But it seems like long gone are the great performances. Like you think of somebody like an Elvis that was really like a showman. You know what I mean? Like you don't really get a spectacle anymore. That's why people will like laugh at a band like Kiss. But you know what though? Say what you want about them as musicians, but they give you a spectacle up there. There's a fucking show there.
Yeah, I haven't seen them live, but I hear they wear big boots.
Pyro, there's a lot of blood, there's a lot of this and that going on.
Yeah, but I think that I can't, I mean, there's so much stuff out there I can't speak to.
Right.
That being a thing of the past, it would just be anecdotal. But I think I would certainly like people be able to take something home that they felt was entertaining yet real.
Yeah.
And felt cool, sounded good, looked nice.
And now, where is it important to because I know like new bands will who I've talked to many young bands starting out that are based in other countries. You are obviously an American that is living abroad right now. So, but is it important to have this music resonate with people in the States? Because I know at one point, and Mark Lanigan talks about this in interviews, talks about it in his book, where at one point, and I think me and ALAIN Johansson talked about this, where he got to the point where he seemed like he was only economically viable and marketable to European audiences.
Well, I think that's that's kind of a complex dynamic. I mean, how could I say it? That
I didn't want to say, is it important for you to make it in America? Because you obviously are American or whatever, but is it important for American audiences to tap into this music too? I mean, Europeans don't seem to get it.
I think, well, to use the example of Mark, I think that there were certainly plenty of people in the States that would have loved to have seen him play.
Absolutely.
But I think there probably wasn't enough of a concentration of them in certain areas, maybe to, maybe that's what made it more difficult. But I'm sure the people were out there. It's just that they're harder to find. And I would certainly like people that are interested in the things that I like, that are in the States, who get a chance to hear the music and decide for themselves whether or not they like it, sure. But it's not really geared towards an American audience or a European one. You know, I'm kind of in limbo myself culturally. I'm not Austrian. But when I was in New Jersey, I don't really think I was a typical New Jersey citizen.
Right.
Right. I was just interested in other things from as far back as I can remember.
But tour dates will be part. But U.S. tour dates will certainly be part of the equation, though, with Slow Bird Drifters.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Don't forget about us in the States here, for God's sakes, Jesus. Well, and you make a good point. That does seem unfortunate, man, that Mark had to be made to feel that way because he did enjoy, moderate success with the Screaming Trees, although they didn't get as big as some of the other grunge bands of the 90s got or whatever. But, I mean, to have him go solo, and then suddenly almost it felt like the United States had almost just kind of like phased him out. You know what I mean? Like to make him seem like not relevant when he was putting out these amazing acclaimed albums.
Yeah. I mean, again, like I think that's probably the way he saw it, but was it possible? Maybe it was, but you have to like start somewhere, but maybe he just didn't want to. I don't really know. I didn't talk to him about it. I'm sure Alan did, but.
Is it tough to assemble a band nowadays because the music business is so tough and it is harder to make money now? And it seems like the streaming platforms are very stingy with the artists. I imagine throughout, even when record labels did exist, the artists were probably always somehow getting shafted and not getting paid, deservedly so. They are giving themselves a piece of us. It is art. You know what I mean? Like, it's your job. It certainly should come with being paid accordingly or whatever. But it just seems kind of sad that that streaming platforms don't seem to want to pay artists.
Yeah, it's certainly sad. I mean, it sucks, but hopefully it's more of like a process of oil and water. Where eventually, if you want this, you go there. If you want that, you go here. If you want live music, there's live music. It's I'm trying pretty hard to not say that it's just, all doom and gloom.
Right.
I know I don't agree with that. It's like,
right.
It certainly is a challenge, but I think that in many ways, the way it's evolved into what it is today, there's always been this tug of war between art and commerce, but right now, I think that it's just commerce and commerce. They're on the artist and the streaming platform. They're on the same side of the desk.
Yeah,
in a lot of ways. And it's not to say that everybody that everyone else is a purist and I don't know. Ask someone else and they will totally disagree with you and they might have a valid point. But it's hard. But I think the internet and social media and doing a podcast like this at the same time, and there's ways to find your audience in places you might have otherwise not been able to find them decades earlier, because life then had problems of its own.
Sure.
It made things difficult, and maybe there's a personal crisis and you're just like out of commission. And COVID did happen, but it did happen at a time when we had this. So,
right. Sure.
Would have been pretty tough.
Yeah. Now, as a vocalist, a guitar player, a performer, just overall, is there anybody, or maybe even like a couple of people whose names you could toss out that you feel like have really influenced you the most as a performer?
Yeah, probably. But the thing is, it's just that, I think there's a time in somebody's development when they're really much more impressionable and malleable.
Right.
And when I was more impressionable, there were people that I felt that way about, but I haven't felt that way in a long time. And I don't think that's because of anything to do with music. It's just me calcifying.
Right.
But when I really liked, I mentioned the Doors when I was a kid, but I really liked the music, and I really liked the way Robbie Krieger played guitar.
Yeah.
And later, as I started to play guitar, it occurred to me that a lot of the things that he was playing, they were phrases that it could have been played on any other instrument, and they would have been just as musically relevant, just the role they were playing in those songs. So that's
Yeah.
the way I heard it. It wasn't so much about the guitar itself as it was about the music. And
Right.
that he really had an influence on me before I was old enough to realize he was having an influence on me.
Yeah. Yeah, that's
You
cool.
never know it, I think, from listening to a Slow Burn Drifters album or some of my earlier stuff. But when I was 14, that's when I really learned to play guitar. And I did that by playing to LPs that I had and just learning them by ear and
Mhm.
along. I had played before that and had a guitar around, but I didn't play seriously, where I just buckled down and played all day long, in the
Right.
morning before school, picking on a desk with a pick to practice, everywhere I went with my Walkman. I was just in it. And I had I think, I'd seen early Metallica, and I thought, okay, I was just really, really angry at the time. And that sort of what was being done with guitar and all that palm muting and like early thrash, I learned, I came up that way in like hardcore and
Yeah.
early thrash metal.
Yeah.
And
That's
that had
great
an
era.
influence on me at the time. I like the spirit of it, but I don't play like that anymore.
Right. Right.
I don't, so
Right.
that had an influence on me vocally. Yeah, Mark was definitely an influence in the early to mid '90s, and I only met him later in my life.
Yeah.
Um, who else? You know, it sounds really pretentious of me to say this, but it's just it's true. It's just the way I am. But a lot of times, I'll feel really strongly about a particular song or a moment in a song, and I just can't get enough of it. And
Yeah.
that thing has an influence on me, and I
Yeah.
seem to be no one else even gives a shit about it. But it's things like that. But the rest of the catalog, I'm saying, yeah, it's great. I love that person does what they do, but I don't really need to hear the rest of it.
I think what you're saying is, and I kind of get this too. You almost find like parts in songs, that just hit your ears a certain way, and you kind of like obsess on those parts. Like you keep listening to just that part of the song, not even the whole song sometimes.
Yeah, or it'll be like some kind of transition, the way something happens. I mean,
Yeah.
and I would be, the type of person where I'm, walking through a drugstore or something. I'm like, what is that? That
Yeah.
thing that's before there was an internet, and like I had to
Yeah.
figure out what it was and have it. And, by process of elimination, it was just always like a series of notes or a riff or a line or a groove.
Right.
And for better or worse, whether someone loves what I do or hates what I do, I'm a selective listener. And it doesn't mean I think the rest is bad. It's just that that's what speaks to me, and I'm trying to kind of Frankenstein it together.
Right.
Not always consciously, but I'm like, oh yeah, that kind of reminds me of that thing in Walk On By Dionne Warwick or something.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
instrumental when all the voices are soaring. I don't know where, I didn't realize it till afterwards, but
Right.
you know.
And you mentioned growing up in Jersey. Was music always the only aspiration? Were there other things that you thought you might gravitate to doing in life?
No, it was the only thing I could do. I think
Yeah.
it was just everything else was an absolute and utter disaster. It was the only thing that I seemed to know what to do whenever I did it, and everything else was just, it was like 360 degrees of dyslexia.
Yeah. Right.
And this made sense to me. Like I felt instinctual about it.
Yeah.
As I always imagine most people do. Where, yeah, I mean, there's like, it felt great and everything, and it's a great outlet, but it really made me feel good when nothing else did.
Right.
It still does.
Yeah. Well,
I mean, other things that make me feel good today, but
right.
then,
Yeah. Oftentimes we see bands start out with a certain sound and then they grow, they develop, and you know, it seems like it's such a double-edged sword, and I really, my heart bleeds for artists to have to go through this, you know. And I'll use Metallica because you brought them up, for instance. You know, they're making great thrash, and then suddenly they'll do a black album, or they'll put some more ballads, or or go in a different direction, cut their hair off, go in a slightly different direction, or whatever. And either the fans will give them shit. And it's like, what's the band supposed to do? Do you just want us to just regurgitate Master of Puppets every album and just keep giving you that? You know, but then when the artist keeps doing that, what I'm talking about, repetitive albums, you know, they'll either get labeled as, this band is so consistent. I mean, everything is just great, or they're boring. I mean, and people say, boy, they never do anything different. So you're really damned if you do, damned if you don't, it seems.
Yeah. Oh, that's that. 1 second, I think.
Yeah.
I just swallowed something the wrong way.
Yeah, it just seems like, well, yeah, while you're clearing your throat, it seems like a tough dichotomy, you know, to have to go through. You want a band to be consistent and put out, you know, great thrash album after great thrash album, and I just use Metallica, you know, but it could be anything. Great alternative album, you know. Do you want every Jane's Addiction album to sound like Nothing Shocking? Do you want every Pearl Jam album to sound like 10? Or when they start to do something different, do you applaud that, or do you say, oh, you guys have lost touch. You're not the band that you were when you started. It really fucking sucks all the way around the board.
Yeah.
I got you all choked up on this topic. Look at that, man. Literally and figuratively.
Yeah, maybe what's today? Thursday? Maybe we check back. And I don't know what I just did, but I just went total Godfather.
Yeah. Well, because I think my original question.
I think. Yeah, no, but to answer your question,
yeah,
while sounding like an idiot, but a lot of those things that defined those bands, it wasn't something contrived. It was just something that occurred, like a chemistry, and it happened in a particular moment. And at that particular moment, it happened this way and that way because it represented this, and there was a certain amount of spontaneity, and it occurred, you know. But to sort of force it as a reoccurrence to happen again and again. Well, yeah, it's like you're sort of diluting a substance. You know, you're adding more and more water to it, and it's becoming less of itself. And, you know, you might have to kind of take a divergent path and get away from it to find your way with it again and put out some really bad stuff that doesn't resonate with anybody. Who knows? Or maybe not. But I guess that's a form of, what is the term? Audience capture. But if it's genuine, it's coming from the band. I don't think AC/DC is upset about making the types of songs they write. You know, I think they're. I mean, then again, I haven't listened to them in a long, long time. Past, I don't freaking know.
Well, would you rather have a band consistently putting out albums that sound very similar, or do you like when a band like takes chances and says, "Wow, that's a vast departure"? Like, like a great point, and I saw this in a great Mark Lanigan interview he did with Joseph Arthur. They were talking about when Chris Cornell took a lot of shit for making that album with Timberland. You know what I mean? People were like, "Oh fuck, what that?" You know, he's working with a more or less a hip hop producer. Like, what is this? You know what I mean? Like, you know, are you for musicians taking chances like that?
Sure, yeah. I mean, it doesn't mean I'll like it, but I think that someone like David Bowie, or it's a huge influence on me, or someone like Bjork, you expect the unexpected from them. It doesn't mean you're always going to like it, but they, you know, have a license to be sort of chameleon-like, and that's what the people who follow them like. But at the same time, I don't think, you know, if somebody who's just well known in a certain genre and just looks the part and lives the life, puts out a you know, jazz album, maybe it's just not going to work so well.
Right.
If they feel passionate about it, you know, go do it.
But even when they do it, though, man, they have fans that are so hardcore, though, that they'll buy it just because their name is on it, though. You know what I mean? Like, there are people that are just, like, into a band, and they'll buy, like, anything and support whatever they're going to do. So you're only going to have a certain amount of the fans drop off. There are people that are just into the whole brand and into the whole, like, whatever you do, you know?
I guess it depends. It depends on the artist and know, what it is what kind of left turn it is they make, you know?
Yeah.
But, yeah, I'm all for it.
Yeah. Because I think we talked about this when we talked on the phone too, about like Mark Lanigan early on, you know, Whiskey for the Holy Ghost and the Winding Sheet, you know, and then as his career got older, he started using a little more electronic, you know, drums. The sound changes a little bit, you know what I mean? And it might not have been everyone's cup of tea, but you got to applaud the guy for saying, hey, look, you know, I got a vision. I want to.
Yeah, sure. Obviously, that's what I think he was just somebody that did exactly what he wanted to do, and
Hmm.
that's what he's passionate about. And I think his singing and his phrasing and his lyrics and just what it was he embodied was just so identifiable that it could sort of shape shift into any genre he wanted it to.
Yeah.
You know,
And so Slow Burn Drifters music, while we didn't specifically necessarily nail down a specific genre, I did throw a couple out that are floating around out there. Talking about growth with bands, do you see Slow Burn Drifters being the type of band where the sound suddenly morphs into something else or grows or becomes something else? Do you have a specific vision in mind for the project?
oh yeah, I mean, I would just go wherever it takes me, wherever it takes
Okay.
us, I should say, rather.
Yeah.
But you know, I think the difference is, for me, if a band does something and it just sounds completely contrived, and they were here, and now they are here, and
Mhm.
it sounds like it's really not a good fit. Well, maybe it wasn't, but if you would use the David Bowie example, I just think that what he's defined is this sort of mood and this sort of essence and this sort of observational eye that he
Yeah.
is. And as he moves from genre to genre, it's more like he's expanding the circumference of what he is without compromising its center. You know, where
Right.
it doesn't feel like you went over here and he's just leaning over there really hard. I mean, maybe a couple times, but overall, no. It just feels more like he's expanding, and that's something I would love to be able to do. It doesn't
Yeah.
mean it's always going to work, but you know, you have to at least aspire to do that. You have
And
to, well, let's just say the cutting edge of, I think, what makes somebody do their best work is it always happens where it's most challenging. You don't do that in your comfort zone.
right.
You
Good
would
point. Yeah.
outside forced to come up with a creative solution that you didn't have before.
Right.
If you back yourself into a corner, well, what are you going to do now?
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's where the real risk comes in when you back yourself into that corner sometimes. You know what I mean? Because, but an interesting thing though that I've learned from talking to musicians on here, and maybe you could speak on this point a little bit more, is I've realized that great songs, great instrumentation, all that stuff, certainly an important ingredient for an album. But I've realized from talking to artists on here that the sequencing and the cadence and the way an album flows is almost an art form in and of itself. Speak on what that's like. I mean, what your process is. Here's the album opener. Here, here's how I want it to kind of ebb and flow throughout the album.
Ideally, I think an album shouldn't be, a collection of songs that were written across, a large space of time, over decades or something like that. You
Right.
should sit down to write an album. It's a statement of this particular moment in the format of an album. It's like,
Right.
you've written a book, and therefore, you're telling this story, but the story is sort of telling itself, and everything's been carved from the same block of stone in that way, and it sort of can't help but to have this Lego relationship with itself. The way
Right.
it's, however, is, yeah, I mean, there's certain songs that just sound like they want to be the beginning of something, and certain others sound like a farewell, it'd be a good closer.
Right.
It's just a matter of how many peaks, how many valleys do you want to have, and
Right.
what do you hear after this one? And it's like one of those Rubik's cubes. There seems to be.
Yep.
Now I get it, but I've ruined the other side.
Right. Right.
But,
Yeah.
I mean,
That's a good analogy.
And
Yeah.
but there seems to be something that it wants to do.
Yeah.
And that's why people write songs that don't always end up on the album.
And how did you end up so musically inclined? Like, what was your upbringing like? Were your parents into music at all? Was there music prevalent in your house and playing a lot?
They weren't playing instruments, but I was just surrounded by a lot of
Musical
music.
household.
And had a pretty
Yeah.
tumultuous upbringing, emotionally, and that was just really my sanctuary, going to music, because where things made sense. I got to the point I wanted to make it myself, but yeah, apparently my father's family, many of them I never met because they had already died before I was born. They were all musical, artistic in one way or another. My father had a really good ear, but he didn't play anything formally. But yeah, I started with guitar. Singing came later, and
And at what
songwriting.
age did you get? At what age did you get a guitar in your hand?
I had a guitar in my hand, I think, when I was about 10,
Yeah, that's
but
young.
it didn't do what I wanted it to do. And I took like a few lessons, and that didn't work out too well because I was extremely stubborn and I wanted to play chords with my thumb with it sitting on my lap, which
Yeah,
is possible had I pursued it, but I didn't get it to work out. And yeah, it wasn't until I was, I think, 13 that I had a electric guitar, and I just said I'm going to learn how to do it. And that's when I was playing along with albums every day, every moment I had that I wasn't at school. That's what I
right.
did. Got my first band when I was 16, and I was at rehearsal 5 days a week, and that was it. And I just kept going, and I wanted to learn how to do this. I wanted to learn how to do that because I was just too curious about it.
And what
And
are
that's how.
some goals that you have? Are there goals? Because obviously I talk to a lot of guitar players on here. You're still always learning new things and developing like new skills on the instrument, man. Are there things that you still haven't explored on the guitar that you'd like to, man? Or like, what are some things
Yeah, sure. I mean,
you're
I'm
just discovering and diving into?
in the last 2 years, I had a surgery on both my hands because for
Mhm.
like, I think it was 24 years, I've had pretty intense carpal tunnel, and I couldn't really, I didn't have feeling anymore in the tips of my fingers the
Yeah,
way that I used to. And at first, I was really just in a state of despair, but I got more into doing other things. I got more into singing, I got more into songwriting.
right.
And yeah, the wisdom on the street is don't ever get surgery because it could heal the wrong way, and then you lose the feeling in your fingers permanently. But it actually worked out for me. So there's
Your
a lot
carpal
of
tunnel surgery did work for you. It did. It helped.
it did, yeah,
Yeah,
in both hands. And so yeah, there's a lot of things I wanted to try that I wasn't able to, but it helped me develop a style that's more like it's a dialogue with what I'm singing. Has a
right.
relationship with that, and I'm happy about that. But I'd
Yeah,
like to learn some things that I haven't had time to really get into because I love playing,
yeah.
like finger style stuff with the right hand, and yeah, just different stuff. It's not really I don't know if it's stuff I would incorporate into my own songs. It's just stuff I really like.
Experimenting with. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Just added skills on the instrument. Now, and so when you sit down and write a song, I know we talked about the creative process, but specifically, what's usually the mindset when you're going to write a song? Like, what specific things do you draw inspiration from? Like, some people keep a keen eye on politics, or they write songs about things they see in movies, maybe literature, art, whatever. Man, like, what's the well that you kind of draw off of, or what inspires you?
It's usually just something that's like caught in my emotional digestive tract. It's
Yeah,
something I can't really get it out any other way. Either it bothers me, it fascinates me, a mixture of both. It doesn't have to bother me, but
yeah,
yeah, a lot of times it's something like that. There's no other way to process it. Like Henry Rollins once said, it's poor man's therapy. I think that's
yeah,
true.
yeah.
I think more than that, if you like an alchemist, if you can, spin gold from base matter, good. Well, then maybe something you went through
Right.
that just seemed unbearable at the time actually has some significance for people and helps them go through a similar experience. It's a gift to them, but it's also a gift for you.
Right. Right.
You know,
Yeah. So, so what would you say this Slow Burn Drifters album, the mood that it encompasses?
um, I think that it's sort of this mood where it's like somebody that has one of these, I don't know if it's a Chinese fan or an Oriental fan.
Yeah.
You open
Yeah.
up, if you would
y-
sort of take that, and lie one end of it on something that's just emotionally really hard to take.
Yeah.
And on the other end of it is just this beauty that sort of transcends your individual experience of that. And you open the fan to where it's sort of touching both ends at once. It's kind of a paradox. Like that's the sun shower of a mood, where it's I don't know. I think I heard someone else describe it. It's probably not really my description, but it's like there's this tree in this garden, and this garden is just unbearably sad. But the tree is so beautiful that it makes standing there worthwhile. You're holding both points in your, I don't want to say consciousness, because it's not really a intellectual thing. It's a bodily thing. It's a feeling.
Well, admittedly, there is darkness, though. There are dark themes and dark elements in the music.
It's not dark, but I think it's not darkness for darkness' sake.
Right.
It's like it helps illuminate other things, at least for me.
Right. Yeah.
It's something like that. Ask me tomorrow, I might.
Yeah, the answer might be different. And then now, I always try to thread a couple of my subjective questions in here, man. So, like, these are obviously just your opinion or whatever. But from a fan standpoint, and this is not you as an artist, this is you out in an audience somewhere going to a gig. Is there one or two that really stand out with you? Some people that really blew you away that you got to see live?
Well, there's a lot of people, but going back to what we were saying before about being impressionable, I'd seen Jane's Addiction when they played. They had these peer concerts along the Hudson River in Manhattan. Just before, it was right as Nothing Shocking had come out. That was a great show, and my band at the time, it was like about a year later, opened for Nirvana. Right as Nevermind came out. Yeah, and I had known Bleach, but they weren't technically who they were yet. It was only a matter of months, but I thought that's just fantastic. But there were so many other shows as well, but those are two that come to mind.
Now, what about people? And now, what about people in your travels? And I hate when we're grown men like this to use the word starstruck or anything like that. But have you had the opportunity to meet any people in your industry or just in general that really blew you away, that made a profound impact, where you kind of like, wow, I can't believe I just met that person? I mean, you've named a couple of great ones already. Like, I would be obviously blown away by the Mark Lanigans, the Alan Johannes.
Yeah, sure. I love Alan and Jack and Mark.
Yeah.
I was fortunate enough to work with them, and that's
I mean, somebody that we haven't talked about, though. Is there anybody they really kind of like really was like the pinnacle, like, wow, I can't believe I just met that person?
The Greek god Zeus, but that was in a dream. Napoleon.
Yeah, those are tough people to beat, those historical figures. I know.
Yeah. I have to think about that. Well, yeah, I mean, I mentioned Metallica. I met James Hetfield when I was, I think 17. You'd ask him, I'm sure he'll remember.
Yeah.
He walked into a hotel, and I was sitting there, and he said, "Hey," and I said, "Hey." So, if you ever speak with him, ask. When you were in that in the Marriott,
you said "Hey" too.
Hey. And but
what about like when you see, and this is just again another subjective question, this is like you putting your promoter's hat on, if you could put together a tour package, Slow Burn Drifters going out with who could you see yourself packaged together with, like, would make a great show?
Oh, there's so many, but I'd love to play with PJ Harvey, Nick Cave, and the Bad Seeds.
Yeah, absolutely.
God, David Bowie, but we're gonna need a time machine.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. I don't know.
Those are great builds, though, man. I mean, come on, man. Like, you guys with any of those artists is amazing.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's kind of tough, man, because it seems like nowadays, like, that is the way, like, bands go out nowadays. It always seems like there's two, sometimes even more now. It used to just be a pretty cookie cutter, an opener and a headliner, but like now you're seeing bands, and maybe it's a little more prevalent in the rock and metal world, but you'll see 2, 3, 4 bands on a bill sometimes.
Yeah. As long as it's a good bill, everybody stays.
Yeah. Yeah. So I want to ask you, for you personally, now this one is usually one that either people answer right away or they wrestle with a little bit. But if you could put together your Mount Rushmore, and yes, people did correct me in the comments section. I didn't even know that Mount Rushmore was in South Dakota. Now I do. Thank you to some amazing fucking person out there that commented on that. I should know my own fucking country, my own geography. I had a day where I had a hiccup on here. I brain farted and didn't know where it was, and I took shit for it.
Maybe that's another reason you should learn to read.
I know. There you go. Yep, another reason. You're right. But your Mount Rushmore of all-time artists, the 4 that mean the most to you.
Oh, wow. Oh, I can't do it in 4, but I'll tell you 4 people I really like.
Okay.
Okay. I like the composer Bernard Herrmann.
Okay.
I like John Barry. He's a film composer too.
He's great. Yep.
Yeah, I like Nick Cave a whole lot. I like The Doors a whole lot. I like Swans too. I like Morphine.
Oh, I know.
The band, not the
yeah. Who doesn't like Morphine, the non-band? But I mean, yeah, the band. I love the band too. Yeah, and a good shot of Morphine once in a while is not bad either. But their music is great though.
Yeah,
I imagine Morphine on Morphine would be probably pretty fun.
No comment. Well, man, I don't want to ruin your podcast now.
Oh, come on, man, too late, man. I mean, too late. I'm 260 some odd episodes in, and have had some of the most horrific moments on here. I mean,
who else?
Most of those, though, I will say, technical difficulties usually, or me being or me having maybe smoked a little bit too much and taken a few too many edibles and come on here and try to do an interview. But sometimes those end up being great.
Okay. Yeah. Well, let's leave it with those. Did I mention 4? 4
yeah,
is nice.
easily.
Nice.
Yeah, easily 4. And now here's one that I think you will have a definitive answer on, man. If I were to take you and drop you on a desert island, what would the desert island album be if you could only take one? And this is a grim prognosis, and I've talked about this with many guests on here, man. First of all, you're stranded on a desert island. That always fucking sucks. One album, that really fucking sucks. And essentially, this is the album, man, that you're gonna, I guess, is the soundtrack to your death too.
Yeah, I guess
you've only got the one.
Okay. Now I've almost forgotten this guy's name, and you want me to find his name?
Well, he is your. I mean, he is your desert island album, right?
Just hold on a second. Yeah, but if I'm on a desert island,
and of course, while you're searching for it,
it needs to be.
But while you're searching for it, I will say though, man, that in the past, people.
Martin,
who is he?
It's his album where you have like these grown men, making this tiki bar music, what they imagined a desert island to sound like, and they're making bird noises over vibraphones, and it's really tacky.
And what's his name?
I think it might be Martin Denny or something like that. And there's like a big like tiki mask with bamboo on it.
And this is your desert island album.
Well, if I'm going to be on an island, I might as well take that.
Embrace it. Yeah.
Live the life.
So is this actually music?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like really bad lounge music, but so really bad it's good.
Yeah, really bad
lounge
music.
Men are going like, wow, like that.
And now, because you do have
as I lose my mind, this is what I want to hear.
Yeah, you probably are going to lose your mind out there too. Yeah. I'm glad you added that, man. I'm gonna have to bring that up to guests now too. Now think about an album that you want to lose your mind to too. I mean, death is bad enough, man, but
yeah, I'll find out if that's actually who it is. You might have to edit this out. But
Yeah.
I
Well,
think
I
it's
don't edit
really,
anything. People know I don't edit anything. I'm 51 years old. I just don't know fucking how. I'm lucky I even get to this point where I can open up the damn computer and get on here. So, I mean,
yeah.
yeah. I've had a lot of moments that I would have loved to have edited out. But then again, I always say at the beginning of the episodes, though, that I'd want, because sometimes my guests will text me and I'll be looking at it and I'm recording already. But I say, I won't edit this out. I'll keep it in here, man, for posterity's sake. I'm big on posterity.
Yeah,
We're
no, but I like
recording
that
right
idea
now.
you told me on the phone where you got that silencer in the bottom of your chair so you can't be heard farting through the podcast.
That's true. Yeah,
Really ingenious.
God, I've revealed too much to you, man, I guess, man. I thought you would keep that
It was
stuff
a
in
little too
secret.
much information, but it's not like this is going out to the public or anything.
Right. and
Everything's on the internet only. Yes.
yeah, that's right. The internet is forever. You got to remember that too. I mean, this will never go away. Or it might. Who knows what'll come along in 20 or 30 years, though, man. That might just wipe all of it right out. I mean, but because people always think the internet is forever. The internet is forever. The internet is forever. If it's on there, it's on there forever. But do we really know that's true? We don't.
No, we don't.
No, we have no idea, man. There's a lot of uncertainty, man. Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah. And so I want to just touch on really quick, because you did say that you're a New Jersey transplant and now you're way over in Austria. Now, of all countries, well, why specifically Austria? Can you shed a little light on how you choose the location of where you're going to work out of, live out of?
Yeah. My wife is from Austria.
Makes perfect sense. There you go. There you go. That's the correct, that's the correct answer.
Came here being a naive American, when it was also not so great at I didn't really know the difference between Austria and, let's say, Sweden. It was all part of Europe.
Right.
You would say that someone here, they'd be shocked.
Yeah.
As they should be.
Yeah.
But I just ended up here and made the best of it.
That makes sense. And so that was the question I was going to ask you, because you do have such a grit and a grit and a weight to your voice or whatever. Are you somebody that ascribes to any type of voice care or a regimen or warm up type stuff? I know a lot of singers can be very a lot of hydration, booze.
It's just I think the reason my voice sounds the way it does is because I snore.
Snore?
Yeah. I recommend snoring.
Okay. So all you snores out there.
Well, I'm told I snore. It might be a rumor because I keep waking up and I don't hear anything. I would say stay hydrated and gotta be able to sing live. Because nothing is ever the way you want it to be. In a difficult situation, you will not hear yourself. And it's just like it's a confidence thing, I think. Opening your mouth in front of people. And I think that it takes time to really find your comfort zone with your own voice. Comfort zone, maybe living comfortably with expressing yourself through your voice and the way you hear it. When I sing, I hear it in my skull. Other people hear what's coming out the other end. You hope it's good.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
You get neurotic about that? I mean, when you're going to play live, man, is that something that have you watched yourself back? Like past performances, live and been satisfied with how you sound live?
I don't like to. I love doing something in that moment, but I really don't like to listen to it afterwards.
Yeah.
Whether it has nothing to do with singing, though.
It's gone. Yeah, the moment's gone. Right.
Yeah. I mean, you kind of have to at some point, but I don't really enjoy hanging around after the fact and watching it. But if other people can enjoy it, I think that's great. I think I'm not alone in that, but it's just. Sometimes I think it's just healthier to just, let it go.
Yeah.
I mean, if it would prevent you from doing it again, well, then that's a problem. That's not a problem. I mean, I just don't really like to listen to it more than I have to and watch it.
And I know we did talk about, several minutes ago, about the advent of technology and it becoming so prevalent. But obviously, to kind of tie everything up here, man, where's the best place to stay tapped in with what you're doing? Obviously, you got to be a presence out there. You guys have a website, correct?
Yeah, at the moment, I guess the website, as much as it pains me to say it, social media like Instagram or Facebook or Bandcamp was a good one.
Yeah. So you guys are out there on all those things, all those forums.
Yeah. Usual.
And people can go there and they can listen to the singles, and eventually in March here they can get the album.
Yeah, they can go there and judge me.
Yeah, they can go. Oh, and they will, believe me. That's one thing I brought up on here before, man. How now it seems like people bring their cell phone to concerts, and it isn't even just, again, for posterity's sake, just to say, oh, I wanted to get a little clip of this song that I really love or whatever. They literally are there to get you, bring you home, upload you onto YouTube, and criticize. And everybody's an armchair critic nowadays. Oh, they don't sound the way they used to. Oh, I think they're using backing tracks. Oh, look how awful they were the other night when I saw them. It's just
a great environment for taking a risk and developing new things.
Yeah, it is a risk. Yeah, it really is. I know. It's a scary one too, man. I mean, what the hell happened to just holding up lighters, for God's sakes? Those days. I
didn't hold up a lighter.
I know. I'm not sure why.
Maybe that came from if somebody liked you. They used to, if somebody used to want to talk to God, they'd sacrifice an animal.
Right.
And I said, well, maybe that's a little, can't you just say this prayer?
Yeah.
Not that I say
you got him here.
Well, maybe they used to set themselves on fire.
Yeah.
And really wasn't productive because the audience just kept shrinking, and they would hold up a lighter. Yeah.
Yeah. And now it's cell phones.
Yeah. I don't know. As technology gets smaller and smaller, maybe it'll just be this nanotechnological shift where people's eyes will just be illuminated at some point, like some possessed demon, and you won't hold up anything.
Well, it would be nice to be there and be present.
Like that from behind the monitor. Would be.
There used to be a time when you were present in the moment at concerts, though. I mean.
Well, that would kind of be the thinking, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
How there can you be?
Right.
You're just, there's a George Carlin joke about like instant photo. He's like, doesn't anybody just remember anything anymore? And
I know.
It's like fast forward to this, it's like, well, okay, I settle for 24-hour photo.
Yeah.
That's because I'm old.
Well, listen, man. We've done almost an hour and a half, man. This has been a real pleasure, man. I'm glad we got the chance to. Yeah, but then again, man, we talked for almost 2 hours the other night, man, and it just went by like that too, man. So yeah, keep that under wraps. Yeah, but listen, man, I appreciate it, man, and I'm going around hailing you guys. I love what you guys do, man, and I hope people will tap in, man, and get behind it, man. I'm super excited, man. The album is great, man. The songs are great, man, and I'm glad we've connected in life, man.
Yeah, well, thanks for having me. I really appreciate it as well.
Yeah, I appreciate it, man, and it was so good talking to you, man, and hopefully we can do this again when it gets a little closer to the album coming out. Yeah, we'll do it again, but we're in touch, man. So I'm sure we'll be talking.
Okay.
All right. Appreciate you, Ray. Thanks so much, buddy. Yep. Good talking to you, man. Later.
Okay. Bye.
There he goes, folks. That is my boy, Ray VALE. Let me give myself a look because I didn't get a chance to do that at the top of the interview. God damn, 90 minutes in and the kid still looks fucking amazing. Of course, I'm going to attribute that to Good Genetics. Pops up there on the wall. Diamond David Lee Roth Jr. And when I need a little help with the quaff, it is going to make an appearance here. It's a brand new year, but the same old product, folks. You won't look this good. Rule that out completely. I want you to make sure that you understand that this is not going to equal this. This is Rockstar Jeans and touched from God. But you can up your game levels with this stuff. And I suggest it, man, because life's all about levels. That being said, make sure to like and follow PodScum on Facebook, and make sure to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay tapped in, man. This is where the most amazing conversations happen, right here. People coming on, chopping up with your boy, Reckless Rexx, and of course, the utterly useless Freddie Mercury puppet back there, who again added nothing to this episode. But you probably got to look at those teeth. How could you not? You can't miss them. And my biggest thanks to my boy Ray VALE, coming all the way from Austria, man. Your boy Rexx, Mr. International, does it again, man. I'm spanning continents and seas and all of that stuff, man, to bring the best content, man. But I appreciate Ray because there is a big time difference, man. It's not super late for him right now, man. But, you know, I appreciate him just being able to make the time, man, and have an amazing conversation, man. Slow burn drifters. Slow burn drifters. I think when you say stuff twice, sometimes you really drive the point home. Do go check them out, please. This is incredible music, man. I know you hear the voice. It's easy to draw the comparison if you're a Mark Lanigan guy like I am. Ray is certainly his own artist, but there is certainly characteristics. So if you like what Mark does, if you like what Nick Cave does, if you like those gravelly, really emotional, atmospheric type of music, man, I can't talk up this Slow Burn Drifters album enough, man. It is absolutely amazing. There are singles out there right now. The fourth one is out right now called Golden. Go fucking check it out wherever the fuck you get your music from, probably streaming platforms. But if you go to their website, there's probably pre-orders and probably physical product, I would imagine. I haven't perused it that much, man, but you can find out everything about them, man. He makes great music. His wife, Violet, plays piano on these songs. A great band. As he said, the great Jack Irons of the Chili Peppers, Pearl Jam, 11 is on there. The amazing, incredibly gifted ALAIN Johannes is on some of these songs. So make sure to go check out Slow Burn Drifters. Trust me on this one, folks. This is Rexx Ruger approved. And that should mean something, man, especially now that we're here in 2025, man. I've been around a minute, kids. I know of which I speak. And I think we can all agree on that. I've turned you guys and hipped you guys onto some amazing music, I hope, and add Slow Burn Drifters to that list. Thanks to my boy Ray VALE. And like I always say when I end these things, and it ain't changed in 2025, remember to take it easy and keep it sleazy.